It seems today that the world is more divided than it has been in many years. With the left and right floating further and further away from each other, it's as though the world has split in two. It feels very much like the stage set in Casablanca. In 1941, shortly after the Germans invaded mainland France, Casablanca became a hotbed of political tension, being one of the last places where the French democracy still ruled. While attempting to avoid all things political,
no ordinary arrest, a murderer no less. If you're thinking of warning him, don't put yourself out. He cannot possibly escape.
I stick my neck out for nobody.
A wise foreign policy.
Rick Blaine finds himself forced by an old flame to remember that fighting for something good will always be above standing on the sideline while evil brews. So I'm going to tell you the story of Casablanca and take a moment to reflect on what this narrative means in today's world. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. As you already know, our story begins in 1941, in a small village controlled by the French in a northern part of Africa, known as Casablanca. This is the last bit of France that is not being controlled by the Nazis, and it is the last stop for refugees attempting to escape into America. This is where we find Rick Blaine, a hardened man running a dingy gambling club and drinking himself numb, pining over the man he once was, and the woman he once had, bound and determined to keep himself out of anything political so as not to have his passions revealed to the world. Rick is an easy character to understand. He's going through something that many people go through, something that's familiar to me. It's a kind of nihilism, a determination that nothing matters. It stems from the bitterness over loss. It's the kind of worldview that makes it easier to cope with the things that we can't explain. When love turns sour, it's easier to believe that it's just a chemical reaction in your brain that, all in, meant little to nothing. You can simply move forward without any care for your past. This view starts with love and then turns into an entire worldview. It leaves Rick a bystander in the most trying political times the world ever knew. He decides to give up on his fight for the good and settle in, waiting for the wind to blow him in any particular direction, simply because now it seems that nothing truly matters anymore. That there's no side of good and a side of evil. That there is simply a massive world in which you are a tiny human being of no importance. The atmosphere in Casablanca reminds me a lot of the atmosphere in modern America. I don't mean to be hyperbolic about the state of American politics, nor do I mean to suggest that either party is a roving group of murderous fascists, even if it is sometimes difficult not to see our fearless leaders as bootlicking representatives of an oligarchy that is slowly but surely grasping control over every last vestige of a once free market to exercise their will on all people and continually increase their market share. What I mean when I say we're living in a time like 1940s Europe is that we are a world deeply divided, and the two sides of the political aisle have completely lost the ability to talk to one another.
And you know what? I'll give you a little secret. He hates her.
The ability to come to a political compromise is evaporating more and more by the day. And if you listen to left-wing and right-wing political news, you'll find that both sides are getting almost completely different information. It seems that both sides speak a completely different language. They can no longer even agree on the meaning of words, and have lost all interest in understanding the position of their opposition. This is where Rick Blaine finds himself. Tired of the political games and tired of fighting, he settles in, refusing to take sides and allowing people to partake in whatever political convictions suit them, so long as they don't impact him. It's a tempting place to sit, to blow with the changing winds, when taking strong stances is often met with extreme scrutiny, punishment, or even death. The film makes the case that this way of being is not worth being at all. It makes the bold claim that some of us are fated for the good and some for the evil.
Each of us has a destiny, for good or for evil.
And fate is what interrupts Rick's peaceful passivity in Casablanca and forces him back into the fight. As the nights continue to bleed into one another, Rick, while watching the criminal endeavors of some of the patrons in his club, finds himself in possession of the most valuable thing in Casablanca. Letters of transit that can be transferred to anyone and get you into the United States, no questions asked. Then, as if timed by the fates, or perhaps a writer of some kind, the woman who left Rick behind in France finds herself in a gambling bar in Casablanca between her husband, the leader of an anti-Nazi movement, and the lover she took when her husband was presumed dead. The man with whom she shared a love that neither of them had ever known before or since. The man she left alone at a train station with nothing but a note. The man she turned from a fighter for freedom to a shell of himself, a drunkard.
I'm a drunkard.
Waiting out the end of the war so he can find himself on the side of whoever the victor might be. Rick, in the early part of the film, is broken. He is respectable and beloved in Casablanca, but he lacks the passion of a hero. When this movie was made, the world needed a hero more than it ever had before, and it is the role of art to give representations of the abstract idea of a hero. Rick is given reason to stay on the sidelines. It makes sense that his pain has caused him to lose his passion. Being passionate means being vulnerable. We know that Rick can act the hero due to the actions that brought him to Casablanca, but he chooses not to because his reason for heroism is gone. Every human being needs a reason to move forward. Every artist, a muse, and every action hero, someone vulnerable in distress. A hero is a hero because they save that which is most valuable. And for Rick, that is Ilsa Lund. Once Ilsa abandons Rick, he atrophies. The most valuable thing in his life has vanished, and he has nothing left to fight for. So the film revolves around Rick finding what he actually needs to fight for. So Rick turns even colder when the love of his life walks back into his life. He drowns himself in liquor and finds every reason to hate her. It is clear, however, that Rick's heart is not as cold as he would have you believe. He offers salvation to another woman who's betrayed her husband, getting them the money they need for an exit visa. Rick has a soft spot. He is, as his friend Louis says, a sentimentalist. However, when it's Victor Laszlo who needs to escape, and Rick is his only hope, he refuses him. It's the only way that he can keep Ilsa around. He acts selfish, with pettiness and resentment. And who can blame him? Resentment is only natural when you're betrayed by someone who purports to love you more than life itself. It takes the realization that that love has not gone away, that Ilsa didn't lie to Rick to soften him, and when he is left to do the thinking for everyone else, he finally affords a kindness to the woman that he loves and to Victor Laszlo, and once again aligns himself with the good. It's Rick's compassion and sentimentalism that make him a compelling character. Early in the film, he isn't particularly nice or charismatic, but he still is popular in Casablanca. He brought his piano player with him from France. He refuses to listen to the song that Ilsa loved so much. His sentiment tortures him because he longs for the past, but it also endears him to the audience and to the people around him. People see through the hardened Rick that presents himself at the club and understand him as a fundamentally good person. It's this goodness that led Rick's fight before the events of the movie. It's this goodness that we're watching him try to come back to, and it's this that eventually leads him to let everything go in the fight for the good. When Ilsa finally plays her last card to save Laszlo, it becomes clear that she cannot go as far as she would like to, as she thinks that she needs to. She aims to kill Rick, but she cannot pull the trigger, and she cannot leave him again. So Rick does what he must to help Laszlo escape, so that the resistance may live on. In his fulfillment of his role as the hero, Rick does the most heroic thing that a human being can do. He lets go of the most valuable thing in his life in service of the greater good. He puts Ilsa on the plane with Laszlo. He makes a sacrifice to the future, because he knows that Laszlo would end up just like he was if he didn't. The underground resistance needs Laszlo, and Laszlo needs Ilsa. So Rick does the thinking for everyone, and saves the resistance, and draws himself back into the fight. If you've seen any of my earlier videos, it's likely that you've heard me drone on before about sacrifice. It is the single most important part of the hero's journey. In order to be a hero, laying down the thing that is most valuable to you is required. This is among the most important ideas that human beings ever had. It's this idea that built the world we live in. It eased the suffering of millions of people. It's allowed many people to live comfortable and happy lives. Of course, if the sacrifices don't continue, if the world is not tended to, evil will continue to rise. Good things, like all things, never last. Entropy tears systems down over time. Our moral systems evolve and pass us by, so a new hero is always required. A movie like this gives us the framework to stand up for what is good, to sacrifice personal wants for the good of the world, and to stop living in the in-between, to stop blowing with the wind and fight for what is right. That's Casablanca's role. It was Casablanca's role in the 1940s, and it shares this role today. No matter your view on politics, it's important to understand that being a hero means being that for everyone. It means letting go of the small pettinesses that are driving you and standing up for what is right, no matter what. Thank you for watching. Make sure you hit like and subscribe, and check out one of my other videos. I just did a very popular one on flow. You know, YouTube, I think this is the beginning of a beautiful movie channel.